I'm not getting that join the meeting button.
Start. You good, Eric?
How about that now?
Good. All right. The meeting will come to order. The meeting will come to order. Please call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris? Here. Mr. Melody? Here. Mr. Weininger?
Here.
Mrs. May? Here. And Mr. Valentine?
Here. Pledge of Allegiance for this evening's meeting. Let's go with Mr. Baker. Approval of the regular minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
So moved.
Second. So, Mr. Harris motions, Mr. Melody seconds. Questions or comments? This is for the September 13th, 2021 regular meeting minutes. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Just pick me up, Glenn. Approval of the regular work session minutes for the September 28th, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Melody. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Approval of the agenda for this evening's meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Melody. Questions or comments? Pretty straightforward. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Dr. Marshausen.
Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Dr. Marjazam. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Valentine, members of the board. Welcome to our first Golden Shamrock presentation of the school year. It is my pleasure to introduce Ed Podnacki. Come on up here, Ed. Ed founded the Golden Shamrock program in 1990, making this one of the longest-running employee recognition programs in Ohio. So we're very proud of it. Thank you for all you do for it. Our first Golden Shamrock tonight will be presented by Mr. Bob Scott, who is a principal at Dublin Scioto High School.
Mr. Valentine, Dr. Marshausen, board members, and Ed, thank you so much. These are the fun times that you get to be a principal, when you get to bring up a person like John Witt, and he hates this. This is great. And so what I did is I looked up the definition of role model, and it's a person looked to by others as an example to be imitated. And then right below that was this big 8x10 glossy of John Witt. He is absolutely everything you want your child to be around. He's motivating, empathetic, demanding, positive. He's a kid magnet. He loves teaching more than anything. He gives us so much time to those kids in class every single day and after school and on the weekends. He loves coaching. He's coached for as long as I can remember. And just to watch him coach up all those kids to play well above their capability week in and week out. I know Carl, who came to support him tonight, loves having him there, and he's the world to that football team. He's an unbelievable colleague. He'll do anything for anybody in the building at any time. The first one to volunteer when we're a sub short. He'll give up the one period he has to help out Karen Weller to make sure that the classes are covered. He's grounded, extremely grounded. He knows who he is. He loves his family more than anything, and his faith is very important to him. And Whit, show him your cell phone. He doesn't have one. Nor does he have social media. Yeah, go ahead and clap for that. More than anything, he loves the veterans. He loves to celebrate our Veterans Day. He's the driving force behind what I would consider to be the greatest Veterans Day program in the state of Ohio, and maybe one of the best in the country. And he's the reason for that. He's the driving force, and it's something for us to be proud of each and every year. And if you're a veteran, please come by on, what's the date? November 4th. He gives so much of his time, and so I'd like to say to his family, thank you, because I know some of that's a sacrifice that he takes from you, but he means the world to Scioto. And there's nothing that he wouldn't do for a kid, whether it's ours or his. he'll do anything to help a kid. He hates the praise so much. This is really burning him that he has to be here. There was a 50-50 raffle as to whether or not he was going to make it. We have our staff meetings, and we were so excited to finally get WIT. Here we go. We had it. It was going to be in there. We got all the buntinis. Everybody was rolling in. It was the last thing on our agenda, and he tore a calf muscle so that he would have physical therapy so that he could miss our staff meeting. So he completely missed it and left us all hanging there. So, of course, I went down first period and humiliated him in front of his class and told him how wonderful how wonderful he was, and all the kids came up and line after line, kid after kid after kid went through the line and gave him a hug. So that's what he means to the kids. That's what he means to our staff, and I couldn't be more proud to have John Witt be our Golden Shamrock Award winner. John?
I'm not good at this stuff. To say I'm humbled would be an understatement. To get to do what you love and someone recognize you for it in this way is truly overwhelming. So just know that I'm beyond grateful for it. For those of you in the room who participated in making this possible, it means more than I could ever tell you. To my wife, who's the most amazing person I know, I think Mr. Scott hit it on the head. There's a lot that I give of myself in pursuit of my passion, which is teaching and coaching. And sometimes it means that I don't always get to be fully there at home. So just want her to know how much I love her, how much I appreciate her. And because of her sacrifice, hopefully somewhere in there, I'm able to make a difference. And to any and all students, and I know there's a few who I've had the opportunity to work with in the past, just know that you add value to my life. Every day, I can't imagine getting up and doing anything else. And just the fact that I can tell people that I get to teach in such an amazing place, amazing community, and with such amazing young people is, you got to pinch yourself because it's hard to fathom. But again, to the board, thank you. Coach Johnson, thank you. To Mrs. Jacoby and Miss Jacoby, thank you. To the Noskers, thank you. To anybody who made this possible, you have no idea what this means. So I just appreciate all of you. So thank you.
Our second Golden Shamrock this evening will be presented by Mr. Mike Allring, who's the Director of Principal Leadership.
Dr. Marshausen, Board of Education, honored to be here tonight to help present the Golden Shamrock Award to Mr. Sean Ritter. He is the principal at Bailey Elementary. This is his, okay. This is his third year at Bailey. So if you go back to the last 2 years of what it looked like to be a principal, and he is being honored tonight by his staff and families for doing such an amazing job. We're all honored to be here in Dublin Schools. I'm honored to be here and get to work with Sean this year. So I'm so grateful. I'm going to turn it over, though, to Gina Seaman, who is the assistant principal at Bailey Elementary, and she's going to fill you in a little bit more on the greatness of Sean Ritter.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, board, and Dr. Marshausen, all of you for listening to us tonight. Well, I am new at Bailey this year, so I am just getting to know Sean, but it was such an honor to be able to read all of the nominations that people wrote last spring when they nominated him. So I went through and I highlighted some of the snippets that I thought you might all enjoy hearing. Sean is a dedicated leader at Bailey. He has great creative ideas and solutions and is always open to new ideas. He is caring and thoughtful of others and always seeks other perspectives and puts others first. He always delivers a message of positivity, calmness, and encouragement. Sean equips his staff with the tools they need to be successful and troubleshoots problems as they arise. He is extremely insightful. He goes out of his way to make sure the staff is involved in the decision-making process. He is an incredible team player. He is by far the best principal I have ever had. He is so student-centered. He builds relationships with some of the trickiest students. He is approachable and has a great personality, and I am learning characteristics of a great leader by watching his leadership style. Mr. Ritter is an incredible asset to the Bailey community. He is kind, empathetic, thoughtful, and truly one of the best examples of a lifelong learner I see in our education community. He has exhibited incredible leadership in helping one of my children for whom school is incredibly challenging. He is positive, patient, and his optimism knows no bounds. I cannot overstate the positive impact Mr. Ritter has had on changing my child's life. Mr. Ritter balances his excellent administrative, interpersonal, and teaching skills with heartfelt compassion, sensitivity, and inclusion. He works well with his staff, students, parents, and the community. No matter how upset or angry a parent is with all that happens, Sean always answers questions with ease and confidence. He never gets upset or raises his voice. Sean consistently does what makes sense for the staff and students without overcomplicating things. His determination and commitment to serve students, staff, and parents is clearly evident throughout the Bailey community. Despite his many responsibilities as a building administrator, his door is always open to help problem solve, share celebrations, provide feedback, and emotional support. Staff and teacher voices are always heard and respected in the building. And to quote one of our family members, in closing, they said, "Thank you, Sean, for all that you do for the students, their families, and your amazing staff each and every day. You are one in a million, and we are lucky to have you as our leader here at Bailey."
I should be honest, the person who wrote best principal ever was a first-year teacher. I should be clear on that. So I'd like to start by thanking my Bailey team and members of the Bailey community for taking the time to nominate me for this award. Being a recipient of the Golden Shamrock Award is truly humbling, and I feel honored to be part of such a prestigious group of educators. As everyone in this room knows, the last 18 months have been incredibly challenging. Throughout this difficult time, I have found myself feeling grateful to work alongside such a talented, caring, and committed staff. I often tell people that the Bailey staff makes a hard job easier. They are motivated, student-centered, and go above and beyond in every aspect of their job to ensure that students and families feel supported, informed, and loved. It is truly an honor to work alongside them. I'd also like to recognize our students and families. Our students have been resilient, flexible, and most importantly, they have remained committed to always showing care, kindness, and respect toward one another and to our staff during this unprecedented time. Their smiles, funny comments, and hunger to learn are truly what drives our team forward. To our Bailey families, thank you for your patience and understanding as we continue to navigate through uncharted waters. Your trust in our team truly means everything. Before I close, I'd like to recognize current Chapman Elementary Principal Scott Zeoli, who served as my mentor and gave me the opportunity to join a world-class school district back in 2017 as the assistant principal at Chapman Elementary. So much of what I learned from Scott and the Chapman team has helped shape who I am as a person, professional, and leader. And last but not least, I want to recognize the two most important people in my life, my wife Holly and my daughter Marin. They have been by my side through this entire journey. They have supported me unconditionally as I have worked to achieve my professional dream of becoming a principal with the Dublin City School District. They are my balance, they are my why, and I am so thankful for their unwavering love and support. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not grateful to be part of this amazing Bailey community, a community which truly embodies the spirit of the Dublin difference. This is a moment that I will never forget. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Members of the board, at this time, I'll give our per board meeting COVID update to share where we are in our situation battling COVID-19. A couple things for the past couple weeks that we have been working on. We have been in direct contact with Governor DeWine's office to once approve, arrange for the Dublin City Schools to host vaccination clinics for our elementary students. A survey of elementary parents has indicated that over 80% of our parents plan to give their 5 to 11-year-olds the COVID-19 vaccine, and the overwhelming number of those parents would like us to host in-house clinics. Right now, we are also working with some of our lobbyists in the General Assembly. One of the challenges we will have is pharmacists are only permitted to give vaccines to people who are 7 years of age and older, which would leave our 5 and 6-year-olds out of what would be our typical vaccination cycle. So one of the things that we're working with to see if there could be changes in that, we've reached out to some of our healthcare partners to see if we could have potentially RNs or nurses available to give those shots to those 5 and 6-year-olds. While we do give flu shots to students in school during the school day without their parents there, we know that some parents would want to be there for the administration of a COVID vaccine. So we're looking at a flexible environment in which if a parent chose to have their student vaccinated during the school day, there would be a process that they could make that choice. If a parent chose to be there for their student to get vaccinated, the clinic could extend beyond the school hours. Again, we're not looking at a mandate. We're looking at making this available as a parent choice, and the way that the vaccine would be available to students would be a parent choice. This Friday, during our in-service day, we have also arranged, thanks to Mr. Kern's office and Amanda and her team, for our staff to have 600 booster vaccines available. And we will do those this Friday in an in-school clinic for our staff to get that booster shot. We know a large number of our teachers and staff have gone on their own and in the past 2 weeks received the booster shot, which is perfectly fine with us. But as of our last sign-up, we had over 500 of our staff already signed up for this Friday. Getting that booster shot with our substitute situation and all of those other challenges that we faced with shortages along the line with bus drivers and secretaries and food service. For any of our frontline folks who work with kiddos every day, to be able to have that booster shot is a real positive for us as we get ready to enter the mid-October, November, December stretch. The board received an email today from a parent who has a child who is in one of our classes where that class had an unusually high number of positive cases in that classroom. I would be remiss to not recognize Sean Ritter, who is here, because when we had the situation at Bailey, and we've gotten lots of emails at central office, Sean has called every parent himself. Sean has connected with the parents and shared what we're doing at Bailey Elementary School. We work hand in hand with the health department. In any classroom where there are more than 2 positive cases, our nurses are in constant contact with the health department. And at each step along the way, the health department has assured us that we're doing what we need to be doing in this case. When we sent home some students who had tested positive, of course, you run the risk of those students then infecting their siblings and other folks in their home. The other situation that happened with this case in particular was we made tests available to everyone in the class, and we discovered several asymptomatic positive students as the result of this. So we would want our parents to know and our community to know that we're working hand in hand with the health department, that we are, if the health department had said shut down that class, we would have shut down that class. So that's the work that Mr. Andres and our nurses are doing throughout the process. The other part of that in our partnership with the health department is we're working and really trying to get ODH to help us with some of the quarantine situations. County-wide, when you look at the suburban school districts across Franklin County, less than 4% of the students who are quarantined end up being positive. So you've got 95% of the kids who are home for a period of time and never get to the point where they have symptoms. So is there a better way to do this? And we continue to ask our health professionals for assistance. I am incredibly proud of the work we do in Dublin. Our nurses go above and beyond what is required in terms of the contact tracing process. It actually keeps our kids in school, because the better we contact trace and the better we get to following up, the more kids who don't end up getting quarantined. When you look at some of our schools, our modified quarantines are really high. That's because those elementary kids are wearing masks in school. And when you look at students who are wearing masks in school, when they're unvaccinated, they get to stay. And going back to our original meetings in this room, if you want to stay in school and you're not vaccinated, you wear a mask. If you're eligible to get vaccinated, you get to stay in school. And that has been consistent since mid-August. So we work through those situations. When you look at our numbers where we are today, our mask exemptions have been very, very stable. We've gone through some situations where parents have withdrawn the mask exemption because after the second or third quarantine, having my child wear a mask gets them to stay in school. They've had their kid wear a mask to stay in school. So we've been consistent, just shy of 6% of our students with the mask exemption over the course of the first 6 weeks of the school year. When we look at our case count, as of today, we have 73 positive cases. This is consistent with where we've been since September, post-Labor Day. We've been in the 60, I think, has been about our low. A little bit over 100 has been our high. We have been consistent with these numbers where we are now. And it's something that I was asked today, when are you going to remove the mask exemption? Well, our doctors committee has been fairly steady in their message with us. When we get to around 50 cases per 100,000, that's when the CDC would no longer label us a high incidence area. So when we get to 50 cases per 100,000, we will consider lifting the mask exemption, or when the elementary vaccines get us into that 70 to 80% vaccination rate in our buildings. So those two things, it's not a both, it's an either or. We've seen our numbers at the county level and at the district level decrease over the past 2 to 3 weeks, but we're not seeing a precipitous drop in that slope. We're seeing a slow drop in the slope when it comes to where those cases are. And this has been mirrored in the numbers that we've seen across the district as well. Right now, we have 132 students in straight-up quarantine. Those students are either unvaccinated or unmasked students who were direct contacts, or family members of students who are positive. And when you look at some of the situations that we have, the family members of those elementary and middle school kids make up some of the students there where it's not a quarantine from in school, it's a quarantine from things that either happen in the home or out of school. And if you look here, Bailey Elementary stands out. We have 53 students in modified quarantine, 52 of them are at Bailey. Those are masked students who were exposed to a positive or future positive case. So when we look at the modified quarantines, those are the kids who were wearing the masks for whom that worked. So that's where we are. Does the board have any questions on COVID and where we are in our COVID numbers at this point? We're not anticipating any major changes in either our protocols or our procedures until we see changes in our numbers. Our doctors committee will meet at the end of October again. I found it interesting when we talked about our doctors, when I talked with our doctors committee at our last meeting, our conversation was largely about the what's next. As the fourth surge seems to have plateaued and starts to level down, what does it mean for us? Will there be a fifth surge? What happens when COVID intersects with seasonal flu and influenza? What happens when we come back inside and we start having family gatherings at Thanksgiving and the holiday season? So those are conversations that are ongoing with our doctors committee as we look at what is our path forward as we work through COVID-19. I was at a meeting with Lieutenant Governor Houston last week, and he said this is no longer a pandemic, it will become an endemic. And when you talk to the doctors committee, we're not going to eradicate COVID 100%. There's going to come a point where we have to figure out how we deal with this and what does this look like in a situation where it's not as prevalent as it is now, but it's not going away. So those conversations with our medical professionals, those conversations with our staff are critically important. Because as I hope our community sees, we're out in front of the youth vaccines. We surveyed parents ahead of time. When we get that approval, we'll be ready to roll. We're looking at what's next. We're not waiting to see what's going to happen. We'll play out the scenarios and look at the different processes so that we can be ahead and think about those things before we're faced with making a decision. The more intentional and purposeful we can be, the better the decisions that we'll make.
So I just have, I guess, really one question. So I think the numbers have been looking very stable throughout the last month throughout the district. Like with the situation that just happened at Bailey, do we have a guideline for like if 50% of a classroom is out that we would move them to full remote to, number one, stop the spread, and number two, to provide a learning environment for those kids that would have to be out of the classroom?
Well, when we work with the health department, we look at where the spread took place, and if the health department and our nurses through the contact tracing believe that the risk is no longer there, that the risk has been removed, then we wouldn't need to do anything else with that class. One of the areas that probably doesn't meet our standards and we struggle with is what are we providing for the kiddos when they're home? We have said we're going to provide the material, the teacher's going to send the information, and it's largely what we would have gotten if a kid had strep or if a kid was sick. Our teachers, our heroes, it's hard, they can't give more. And as we look at what are we providing for those kids, that's, I think, where we all struggle when you get 8 kids from the same class, is how are we providing the instruction that you expect from the Dublin City schools when a kid's got to be home for 10 days. That's my struggle, Mr. Melody. So when would we close down a class when the health department tells us you don't have this under control and for safety, those kids need to be home? It was one of our conversations when we talk about influenza. We know what to do when we have influenza. If we get a building that has 15% of kids absent, you shut down the building on Thursday and Friday, you have the weekend, you let the influenza clear itself out, and you go back to school. Is that what we will do this fall? We're going to have to work really closely with Mr. Mazzola and his staff.
All right. And then, so are we still working on a solution for the people that are remote, like providing an extra sub or a virtual classroom for them to be able to still be in the learning
This right
environment?
now is the first situation where it's a large number from the same class.
Right. But that's why I'm asking, so we can get ahead of it for next time this happens, because we know it's going to happen again.
Yeah. Well, we hope it won't happen again, but yes, we'll work on that.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We have Dublin Virtual Academy. We have teachers who work online. One of the things that we encourage our teachers to do is to play to their strengths. And we don't want every classroom to be at the same place at the same time with the same instruction. So to have an external person providing online instruction to the kids who are there becomes a little bit wonky. And in a time when we can't get subs to cover the classes when we have substitute teachers, finding that person to potentially, in this case, be with those kids is a little bit of an issue. So there are a lot of different pieces that we need to put together. And this has been the first situation that it's been a single class that has gotten to this point where 8 kids in a single class are not able to be there at the same time.
Thank you.
Anything else from members of the board? All right.
Okay, at this point, it is my honor to introduce Mr. Tyler Wolf, who is our Director of Social Emotional Learning. Tyler is in the first year of this role that was created this year. Our students have more challenges than they've ever had before. And as a district, we have tremendous resources. And one of the challenges for Tyler is to align all those resources and to pull together what we need as a district level team with everything that's available to us. We can't expect 24 different locations to have connections with Nationwide Children's Hospital and their new wellness center. Tyler's that connection. Connections with Centero and our counselors. Tyler is now that connection. So there's an awful lot that I've thrown at Tyler in the past 4 months, and he has stepped up, and I've asked him to join us this evening to share what we're doing right now and to talk about where this position will go moving forward. So I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Marshausen, and Mr. Valentine, members of the board. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. The other day, I went into a restaurant to get a quick lunch, and I was standing in line with 2 students behind me. And one asked me in a very off-putting tone if I was in line. And I said, yeah, I'm in line, but since you're on a tight schedule, you can go ahead of me. And well, both students just walked past me without a thank you, without any eye contact, without any facial gesture, any sort of verbal acknowledgement at all. And it appeared to me that they felt entitled and simply deserved to be ahead of me in line. So I paid for my salad and I headed towards the door. And as I reached for some salad dressing with my hands full, I tipped the salad and a large part of it spilled on the floor. And I began to clean it up, and I noticed that a tomato had landed near the foot of another student who was standing there. He was deeply engaged in his phone, and he didn't move. He didn't acknowledge that I had dropped half my salad. He didn't offer to help me pick it up or even move out of the way, for that matter. It was my problem, and it was obvious that he wanted nothing to do with it. So I cleaned up my salad and I moved along. So a child can be a valedictorian, can take advanced calculus or chemistry, graduate from high school with a 4.8 grade point average, but if they have no social awareness or social skills, if they lack the ability to handle stress, if they're unable to predict or practice conflict resolution and think critically, none of that really matters. Now, you may be familiar with the words social emotional learning, and this is the definition as outlined by the Ohio Department of Education. The state of Ohio released social emotional learning standards in 2019, and the research is clear across all demographic sectors. So what are the SEL competencies and standards, and what do they really mean? I'd like to go through each one and just highlight what we would want a Dublin graduate to be able to do by the time they leave us. First is self-awareness. A student who has a positive self-awareness is able to identify their own personal emotions, regulate themselves, and know the resources to access if they're struggling. A person with positive self-awareness is able to identify their own strengths and weaknesses and make a plan to achieve their goals. The second competency is self-management. A student with positive self-management skills is able to be versatile in how they express themselves depending on the situation. They can monitor themselves and have self-control. These students are able to set goals and know how to capitalize on their own resources to reach them. This student is able to persevere, learn from setbacks, and never give up. The third is social awareness. The student understands and respects the viewpoints of others, even if they don't agree. The student is empathetic and encourages others to be their best. They're great teammates, and they understand what it means to be an involved citizen. The student respects and embraces diversity. They're interested in making their school, their home, and their community a better place. These students can think critically, and they can solve complex problems. The fourth is relationship skills. And these students know the importance of making and maintaining positive relationships. They're great digital citizens, and they stand up against bullying and negativity, both online and in person. These students are good listeners, and they respect others. They're compassionate, they empower themselves with the resources around them, and they encourage others to do their best. The fifth is responsible decision making. And these students are able to take on multiple perspectives, think critically, and use a decision-making process to land on the best solution to complex problems. These students know how to draw on positive adult mentors, and they learn from their experiences. These students incorporate respect and integrity into their decisions, and they include others who may not have the exact same perspective. These students want to learn and become better, and they understand the meaning of productive struggle. How do we know if our kids are making progress towards these goals? Well, our main tool is the Panorama for Education survey. And this survey is given twice per year to all students in grades 3 through 12. Students at Emerald Campus and DCS Virtual also have the opportunity to take the survey. And I'm pleased to report that our response rate this fall was 86%. Some of the questions on the survey include things such as, do you have a teacher or other adult from school who you can count on to help you no matter what? When complicated ideas are discussed in class, how sure are you that you can understand them? In school, when things get challenging, how likely are you to give up? Once you're upset, how often can you get yourself to relax? And how often do you worry about your grades? Generally speaking, in most areas, students in Dublin score above the national average. We're well above the national average in school safety and supportive relationships, both well over 80% positive responses. The areas we can improve include emotional regulation and healthy behaviors around anxiety. It's clear that we need to do more for the students in these areas. Another survey that we use is the Oh Yes survey. As you can see, this survey is quite long and collects data on topics ranging from alcohol and tobacco use to well-being and general feelings about school. Our next administration will be in the fall of this year. And finally, this graphic outlines the support system that's in place for our students. Much like the multi-tiered systems of support or the RTI triangle that we may be all familiar with, our mental health services triangle outlines more intensive support as you move up the graphic. Tier 1 support is focused on prevention and encompasses all students. Tier 2 support outlines more intensive support, such as small groups or individual conferences. Tier 3 support at the top is the most intensive and ranges from therapeutic support and ongoing counseling to safety plans and suicide intervention triage. I'd like to thank you for your support of student well-being in Dublin. The Board of Education, due to your support, we've been able to add 11 school social workers to our staff. So what's in store for this year? We're creating district and building social emotional learning teams. We're pursuing an aligned resource for SEL in the elementary schools. Our November Professional Development Day is dedicated and devoted to social emotional learning and student wellness and safety, and will include all staff, classified and certified. Our partnership with the College of Social Work at Ohio State University is expanding, and it includes mentorships and internship programs and life sports here in Dublin. We're expanding the use of Panorama to include more frequent check-ins for teachers to monitor student well-being. We're implementing and growing SEL and service learning activities for students at all levels. Our community partnerships are increasing and becoming more intentional. Student well-being is everyone's business. Dublin schools, along with our parents and our community, all need to join together and provide support for our kids. We must model how to respect and get along with each other when opinions are passionate and different. We must model how to think critically when we're faced with challenging problems that have different solutions. We must show respect and empathy for each other when the room is full of different people with different experiences. We have to help our kids develop and maintain healthy relationships and stay mentally sharp. And we need to teach our students how to persevere and learn from their setbacks so they can achieve their goals and contribute to our community. This is a big task, but it means a brighter future for all of us. And again, I want to thank you for your support in developing the whole child here in Dublin City Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. I think that we'll probably have some questions as we go around. Ms. May, do you want to start?
Forgot about that. There is a large parent responsibility component to behaviors. When in the process, either of the SEL or the rest, do the parents get brought into this to the process?
Well, I think it's always important to include parents from, early on when things are happening. And, whenever a behavior or a concern, comes about in the schools, if it's something that's beyond, something that's corrected or remedied quickly, and easily, kids make mistakes all the time. Mm-hmm. So we help redirect them a lot. But, whenever there's a situation where we feel like a parent should be involved for assistance or informational purposes, I think, principals are good at letting parents know. But and also it goes the other way too. If there's issues at home that it's important for staff to know about, we welcome that information. So, especially if there's a mental health crisis at home that we should know about to ensure the safety of kids. We want to know that as soon as we can.
But if you all pick up on a mental health crisis or an issue at school, you pull the parents in immediately?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought so. Thank you.
Yep.
As we look at this triangle, obviously, the more that there's assistance or intervention at the Tier 1 level, it hopefully eliminates issues at Tier 2 and Tier 3. Clearly, some of the data that we would be getting will shed further light. But as we look at it anecdotally right now, and we look at COVID, we look at what we're going through as a community, as a state, as a nation, what does Tier 2 and Tier 3 look like would be my first question. And then my second question is, what does that look like in terms of as you look at the landscape of elementary, middle school, and high school?
Sure. Tier 2 and Tier 3 are more intensive intervention areas of the triangle. The Tier 1 at the bottom is a lot of prevention, a lot of things that take place in the regular education classroom. As I said, SEL competencies and standards are everyone's business. So, teachers, this is not new. SEL competencies are not new. So teachers across Dublin K-12 have been doing Tier 1 interventions that are related to SEL for, forever. So those Tier 1 interventions are classroom prevention for all students, general ed kids, all the way to atypical students. So the delivery of that is in the classroom by the counselors. Centero does some prevention. And then moving up in the triangle, it's just more focused. There might be small groups. There might be interventions that are outlined in a safety plan or a MTSS plan or an RTI plan in the Tier 2 area, where we could pull in like small groups like Centero or our S3s to do more intensive support. Say, there's a divorce group or a bereavement group or something like that. And then Tier 3 is more of the intensive, maybe one-on-one therapeutic individualized type of interventions. A lot of them outlined on an IEP, where a Centero or a S3 school social worker, intervention specialist, Centero clinician would work with that student as outlined on the IEP. And that would be consistent K-12.
Are the numbers at this point, I probably should have been more pointed with my question, are we seeing higher numbers in Tier 2 and Tier 3 at this point?
Probably not yet. I think we're from my perspective, we're probably seeing some more behaviors, elevated behaviors than a typical year. And a lot of that is the COVID trauma, and coming back. Everybody has experienced some kind of COVID trauma. And, some is more severe than others. But I think a lot of kids are having trouble adjusting back, getting along with their friends. They're readjusting to live, interactions. So, there's always that period of time at the beginning of the school year where everybody has to readjust. And this year it just seems to be taking a little bit longer for everyone to readjust. But I think we'll get there. just a little more intense transition period for sure.
So when someone's identified, like in a tier 2 or tier 3, how is the communication happening across their entire like teaching team?
Yeah, so
especially at the middle and high school where it's not one primary teacher all day.
Right. So at tier 2, if a student enters into tier 2, they typically have a plan, whether it's a MTSS plan, RTI plan, safety plan, something like that. And those plans are communicated, by the school counselor, the S3, or the Centero clinician. When I say S3, it's school social worker, and those plans are communicated to each teacher that child interacts with. So everyone knows if the child's on a safety plan, every teacher that has contact with that child should know what the procedures are, to keep that student safe.
All right, thank you.
Tyler, can you comment on how the teachers are the front line and what their important role is?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And the teachers, the classroom teacher is the first line of intervention, aside from the bus driver when the student walks on the bus. The student walks into school and, the teacher is that first line. They have the closest relationship with the student, aside from the parent, of course. They can, quickly intervene with a student, whether it's take them out in the hallway and speak with them, or make a plan for their day. Teachers say all the time, I can tell as soon as they walked in the door what kind of day they're going to have. We hear that all the time. So that's what that first line of intervention really means. It's that first impression, it's that first contact, the closest relationship, and that classroom teacher is key in determining, is this a situation that I can handle in the classroom and help this child, or do I need to seek assistance from the school counselor or someone else to get assistance? So.
That's great. We really appreciate our teachers in that role.
100%. Yeah, our teachers are outstanding at that.
The board has put quite a number of resources behind this with our social workers, our mental health specialists, additional guidance counselors at some of the buildings to make sure that we're serving and addressing all these social-emotional learning needs. Are there any things that you're looking at in the future where the board might be able to assist and provide resources to help move this process along?
Absolutely. There's all kinds of things that we, looking on the horizon, things that we would like to do. We definitely want to take a look at the data that we collect over the course of the semester and the year and see where the needs are and base decisions, based on the data that we get, all kinds of different ways to get that. But yeah, the addition of school mental health specialists, school social workers, we have counselors in every building, which is amazing. And just to increase the amount of mental health support and wellness support for students in our buildings is always welcome and very much needed. So we appreciate the support that's been given, and any more staffing allocations and things like that to have students, give students the accessibility to mental health services and student wellness for sure.
One final question. Do you consider our drug and alcohol counselors as important components of that? Are needs being met in that area?
They're very important. I think they're critical. We have certainly, Dublin's not immune to drug and alcohol problems. We currently have 2 substance abuse counselors. I think we could always use more. We have a lot, we have a lot of students in the district. In terms of their effectiveness, it's I'm sure they're very effective in cases, and it's like anything. There are some that are very effective with, and some they have limited, impact with. But I think that their caseloads are high, and we could always use more substance abuse counselors in the district.
Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Tyler, I'd like to go back to, if you can go back to the OES survey slide real quick.
Sure.
And this gets us a little bit off of, I think, the point of the SEL, but I want to use the time or the moment to address some of the stuff that we've gotten through email chatter and you and I have dialogued with. Between you and Dr. Marshausen, you mentioned at our last meeting, can you explain the why behind why the state of Ohio does this survey? That would be my first question, and I got a couple follow-up.
Sure. the state of Ohio does this survey to collect information and data on trends across the state and compare those with national trends. It's given every 2 years. It's a free survey, and the data is collected so we can look at trends and we can look at areas of need. So, over the course of the past 3 administrations, we've seen our data has improved each time it's administered, and we hope to see a continuation of that improvement. The information about the OES survey, is communicated through building newsletters and emails. And, I know there's been a lot of emails from parents questioning, about the OES survey. And we can always do a better job of communicating that. And we'll take this opportunity to, reflect on the feedback that we've received and to make decisions moving forward about the OES survey and when it's communicated and the opt-outs and all of that. So we take all that feedback into consideration.
And you kind of stole a little bit of what I was going to say there, but is one, just how we communicate that out, but two, there's what I would say are screenshots or parts of that survey that obviously have been circulated, whether or not to us on email or social media. And I guess a part of my concern with that, especially as we tap down into the 7th and 8th grade level, is some of those questions and specifically around sexual activity and the ability for a parent to navigate those conversations with their children or with their child, which kind of goes back to what Ms. May was saying to some degree earlier. Mm-hmm. The way that some of those questions, at least in their appearance through what I've seen, are presumptuous in nature and can come across as if it's, especially as a impressionable 7th and 8th grader in particular, I'd go with that, that you would be involved in that sort of activity. I would like to see us be more proactive in communicating the type of questions that may be on a survey such as this to our parents, so that we aren't putting families in that sort of position where maybe they haven't had the level of detailed conversation with their child or with their student at that point, and they can proactively opt out.
Right. Yep. Makes sense. Yep. And all the questions that on the survey are available on the website, and they're available in each of our schools. But yeah, thanks for that feedback for sure.
Thank you.
Chris. Tyler, thank you. I just have a couple of follow-up questions. With regard to the OES, that's every 2 years, 7th through 12th. That's administered by the state of Ohio?
Yeah, it's a joint effort. The Ohio Department of Education, I think it's ODH, a couple different organizations come together to create the survey. Mm-hmm.
And then how is it returned to Dublin?
How's it returned?
Let me be more specific. Can we read the data down to a building?
I don't believe so. I think it's just, well, we can go, yes, we can. We can go to a building. We can't go to a student or classroom.
Just to
the
building. Yeah, we can. I could understand why it wouldn't go past.
Yeah, it's all anonymous. It's an anonymous survey.
And so that's every 2 years. Do the questions change? Like, let's say 10 years ago, vaping would have probably not been on this survey.
I look back and it seemed that the questions were the same from the last time we administered it. I think we've only administered OES 3 times, to my knowledge. But I'm sure as new things come up, they would add those questions. But I think as a whole, generally speaking, they're the same.
So that you can track how things are going. Yeah. And just a couple, shifting over to Panorama, who administers that? Dublin?
Yeah. It's Panorama's a product that we've purchased, and we've been administering Panorama for every year for, 6 or 7 years. And it's twice a year for students, once in the fall, once in the spring.
And then we can capture that down to the building level too.
Right. So buildings actually take that data and they, would create some building goals, for students based on the Panorama. For example, there's a question that says, do students in your school, or do you feel a sense of belonging in your school? And a student would, say yes, no, or sort of. And then, so if that particular item comes up low, then the building teams can have the opportunity to figure out ways to make kids feel more included in their school.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Sure. We all really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you,
Tyler.
And any additional questions from members of the board? Thank you, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you.
There is nobody signed up for public participation for action items on the agenda. We will have non-action items down here in a few items. Moving on to Board President, Board of Education comments. All right. Reports and action items from the Superintendent's office.
Okay, just a couple things to share with you this evening. I had the honor of speaking at our Golden Grads lunch since the last board meeting. These are graduates who have graduated at least 50 years ago. So everybody in the room, the youngins in the room graduated in 1971. The oldest graduate in the room graduated in 1945. And there were 160 Golden Grads in the room. And as the new superintendent, I continue to be amazed at the pride and excitement and joy that these folks, some of whom come back from all over the country for this lunch every year. I think the class of 65 has their reunion each year, the weekend of the Golden Grad lunch, and they go to the Bogey Inn, and there's a whole group of them. And to hear the stories from these graduates and get to interact with them when the district at that time in 1971 was smaller than Kaufman High School is today. And they talk about the area not by streets but by farms and who owned these farms. It was just really eye-opening as I continue to have these engagements, and really excited about their feedback and what they're able to share. Same goes with our BAC, and I have to give thanks to Christy Venny and Paige Vornbrock for their leadership on our BAC. We have moved our Business Advisory Council from meeting here at Emerald Campus and talking with our business leaders about what we're doing as a district to now we've moved offsite to the homes of the businesses, and they share with us what they need from us. And in just 3 meetings, it's been transformational. And to hear the members of the BAC talk to each other, when we spent a morning at Ease Logistics and Ease shared with us what they do and the challenges in supply chains, and it was really apropos for what we're dealing with now in terms of shortages. Like, I thought, Kroger never had G2, but when you hear from the logistics people about all of the challenges getting the products there are lots of light bulbs going off in the room, and we're going to be at IGS Energy next month. And when we talk to our businesses, one of the statistics that I shared in a conversation is we're incredibly proud in Dublin that around 90% of our students go to 2 or 4 year colleges and universities. 61% of them finish in 5 years. So when we talk about preparing students for the workforce, there are 25 or more % of our kids who we prepare to go off to college and they don't finish. What skills are we giving those students? Because when we talk to our employers, they want to hire them now and train them, because a lot of the jobs we're preparing students for, maybe they need to go there first and then go to college. So we need to be willing to have conversations about, yes, we need to provide a world-class elite education for our students who are going to 4-year colleges. We also have to prepare them with some of the skills that Tyler's talking about. We need to prepare them with the ability to be successful in whatever is next for them. So that BAC work and what Christy and Paige are helping us do is incredible. I was going to touch on the Oh Yes survey. Tyler kind of teed that up for us. I will share that one of the conversations that I have with moms and dads, and I've had several, is how can you ask 7th and 8th graders about some of these behaviors? Folks, we have 7th and 8th graders who are sexually active. We have 7th and 8th graders who were vaping in school, and unlike when I was in school, where if you were smoking cigarettes, mom and dad knew. If you've got a kid who's vaping at home, you don't know. We have kids who are having suicidal thoughts. We've pink slipped 6 kids to Children's Hospital this year. So there are lots of uncomfortable conversations that we have with our young people. And in 23 years as an administrator, 6 as a high school principal, I've had lots of great kids make life-altering decisions. And I've told parents, I would never say my kid would never. So yes, Mr. Valentine, we need to do a better job in 2023, letting moms and dads know, here's when the survey is going to be administered, here's where you can check out the questions for the survey. But we ask the survey because we need the data, because we need to know what our kids are doing so that we can help our parents when we put together events like Be Well, where we partner with a neighboring district to have a full day conversation with moms and dads about what are kids into today, because it's different than when we were in school. When PERC is putting on events this week, and they're in our e-news that went out today that Mr. Baker and our team puts out, and PERC hosts events so mom and dads can know. So, oh yes is uncomfortable, but we hope that it helps have some of that productive discomfort and those conversations that we need to have. Lots of conversations about DEI and about our work with diversity, equity, and inclusivity. Our focus on Friday will be our DEI work with our teachers. And I point back as the superintendent of schools to a resolution that the board passed in June of 2020 that directed all of this work, that directed the hiring of a director for DEI, involved professional development, and involved a specific focus for our district to make sure that everyone is valued and welcomed and has access to personal educational opportunities to make them be successful. So as we do this work in the DEI space, I would just reassure everyone, there is no hidden agenda. There is no left-wing agenda. Our teachers are teaching our standards. Our teachers are teaching the state standards. We have approved curriculum that our teachers are following in every course and in our work with social emotional learning. It is the state standards that we're teaching. And anyone who says anything different is trying to get people worked up for one reason or another. Our teachers are doing their jobs and they are absolutely amazing. And anyone who tells you anything different is doing it for some other reason than to support the Dublin City School District. At our next board meeting, Mr. Stark and I will give a presentation on the architect selection, and we will ask for board approval for the architect selection for the addition at Jerome High School. We will also share the work that I'm taking a lot of credit for this, Jeff, that Jeff is doing with the city of Dublin to ensure that we can put those 12 modular classrooms at Jerome for 1 year. I signed a letter this week to assure our partners at the city that the additional modulars at Jerome are for 1 year and 1 year only. And by the start of the 23 school year, we will not only remove the 12 modulars that we're going to put there, we'll remove the modulars that have been there for, 5, 6 years by the time we get done. So our goal, and Jeff and I will lay it out in detail for the community at the next board meeting and for the board, is to get those modulars to avert the crisis of overcrowding for next year, to add the addition that will get our short-term solution done. And then during the 2023 school year, we're going to have a conversation about what do we want our high schools to look like in the future. And then finally, one last preview, because I know everybody gets excited about the previews. In November at our board meeting, Mr. Kern will give us our 5-year forecast. A sneak peek to that 5-year forecast would be that we think we'll be able to stay off the ballot until 2024, which is the great news for that that 5-year forecast. So that's where we will be at the next 2 board meetings and the work that we're doing now. I'm happy to take any questions that the board may have.
No questions from members of the board? All right. Approval of policies, technical corrections. It's recommended by the superintendent. The Board of Education approve the attached policies with technical corrections. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Weiniger. Questions or comments for Dr. Marshausen?
These are, again, policies that had the wrong names, had different positions, and as we've, with the change in leadership, moved some folks around, this is to make sure that the right names are in the policy manual, so when people have concerns, they're following the policies.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris? Yes. Mr. Weiniger?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Reports and action items from the Treasurer's Office.
Yes, to piggyback on that, we do have on this evening the financial report for September. As you can see, we're in line with estimates at this point. Estimates still reflect the May forecast that was approved in 2021, and November will update as we go along and have a year roll over adding another year of data for the 5-year forecast. So, which is unique, you know, to the state of Ohio, and the governmental space schools are the only ones required to do that. So, along with that, we'll have that update. But talking about the Jerome additions and such, we will be issuing the bonds while we still have bonded authority left from the 2018 issue. Which we haven't. I think I've said this before. We haven't issued, so we're not paying interest or anything on that. We'll issue those after probably February or March, so just in time to start that work in the spring. It also, and I don't know if Jeff will talk about it at the next meeting, it will get us out of having to do the storm shelter requirement, which would add significant dollars to the project. So it's that requirement is still out there. As long as we issue and start the project before November of 2022, we're still good. That's been kind of rolled. That kind of started, I believe, with the Upper Arlington High School to try to push legislation to keep pushing that storm shelter out, which really makes sense. So anyway, so that'll happen, and you'll be seeing that to authors to go ahead and sell those and issue those bonds will probably be coming, like I said, probably December, January in front of you. This evening, we do have, like I said, have the financial report. We're in line with estimates at this point. We do have one donation and some purpose clauses out there to approve. If there's any questions?
There being no questions, it's recommended by the Treasurer, the Board of Education, approve items 7B, 7C, and 7D. Is there a motion? So moved. Moved by Ms. May. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Harris. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weiniger?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Reports from the Department of Academics and Student Learning.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Valentine. I wanted to take a few moments tonight just to acknowledge the hard work that has been done by our coordinator of wellness, Amanda Spring. It's a really tough time to be an educator. There's a lot of stress, a lot of scrutiny, a lot of criticism. And Amanda has really taken it upon herself to build a really robust list of resources for our staff to use, socially, emotionally, mentally, to make sure that their health is as good as it can be. It is a world-class and an award-winning wellness program that really surpasses that of most organizations around the country. She is also available to go out and meet individually with people. She has met with staff. She has met with small groups of people. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that hard work because I do think it goes above and beyond what most districts and organizations do. And, it does require some initiation on the part of the staff member. It's hard to ask for help, but we want all of our staff members to know how much they're valued, how much we truly appreciate what they have given. It's been mentioned several times tonight, our teachers are heroes, and we want them to know they're cared for, and we truly appreciate the district's commitment to a wellness coordinator to help us execute those needs for our staff. So that's all we have from academics tonight. Thank you.
reports from the Department of Operations. Oh, let me get the service agreement on that. It's recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education approve the service agreement for Debbie Hamrick. Is there a motion? Moved by Mr. Harris. Is there a second? Second by Ms. May. Questions, comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris? Yes. Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Department of Operations.
Nothing tonight unless there's questions by the board.
All right, we'll hear from you next meeting, I am sure. Reports from the Department of Human Resources.
Good evening, Mr. Valentine, Dr. Marshausen, members of the board. Draw your attention to the certified agenda and human resources. On the agenda for tonight, there are 3 retirements. The first one is Kevin Finan, who's an attendance counselor at Kaufman. He has 18 years with Dublin City Schools. John Dye, social studies teacher at Kaufman, has 35 years, will be retiring at the end of the school year. And then Barb Hilligoss is a science teacher at Jerome, who'll be retiring with 23 years in the district. We do have a few more 6-period pay classes to approve along with the district home instruction tutor. There is an unpaid leave of absence request from a certified staff member, and then several winter and year-long athletic supplemental contracts for your consideration and approval, along with pupil activity supervisor contracts, most of them winter with a few fall and year-long commitments. Any questions on the certified agenda? Moving on to the classified agenda, we have 1 resignation and 2 retirements on the agenda. Charles Edmond, lead custodian at Scioto, will be retiring after 21 and a half years in Dublin City Schools. And then Nancy Sweet is a paraprofessional at the Early Childhood Center and is retiring with 12 years in our district. We're welcoming 2 new hires to our classified ranks, and then there are 2 unpaid leave of absences on for your approval as well. The last section is stipends, and there are 13 stipends on the agenda. Most of these are for online course development and DCS virtual. The others include a stipend request for the approval of work surrounding the 2022 Dublin Literacy Conference, middle school home base, van training, and then student vaping awareness. Any questions at all on the human resources agenda?
Brian, one of the best high school classes in all of Dublin, I think it started at Dublin Kaufman. It's our American Studies. It combines AP, American History with honors English. You're probably wondering where I'm going with this. I will get to it.
I'm waiting.
And it's, so my sons went to Kaufman, so I know Mr. D and Mrs. Z is one combination. There's another combination, and it's a very popular class. And my question is, who's going to take this coveted spot of Mr. D?
Wow, that's
You
a
leave
great
that
question.
up to the folks across the street.
I was
eh?
going to say I'll have to ask Mr. Perrell that question
Yeah.
for next school year.
Anyway, it's a great class. And all the people you mentioned have served very, very well. I just know that both of my sons enjoyed that class. So anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for giving me the time to make a
Absolutely.
statement. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
It's recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education approve items 12A, 12B, and 12C. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. May, second by Mr. Harris. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Harris? Yes. Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Reports from the Office of Public Information. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Just a couple of reminders from me tonight. Just on Wednesday, our high school juniors will be taking the PSAT, so students in grades 9, 10, and 12 will not be in school that day. So just a reminder to everybody. Friday the 15th, we have no school due to professional development. We've already referenced that a little bit here tonight. On that same day, Centero has a couple of fall workshops. The morning of the 15th, that information was emailed out to everybody today as part of our e-news update. Dr. Marshausen mentioned PERC. They have an upcoming event on October 20th with Dr. Parker Houston called Raising Mentally Healthy Kids. There are 2 sessions for that, one at 9:30 and one at 7:30. So again, this information is out there online and on our social media. I just encourage everyone to check that out. And 2 reminders of resources. We've talked a lot about resources tonight. Our district has the ability to offer a global travel program, and we've got some great trips planned for 2022 in the summer specifically. That information has been posted online, so I encourage folks to check that out. And students looking maybe for an after-school job or something on the weekends, we have a great job resource page available online. Because as the economy has allowed a lot of our students, almost all of our students who want a job, to have a job. So we've got those resources out there for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Items for board discussion. Future agenda items. All right, public participation for action items not on the agenda. As a board, we recognize the value of public comment and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on school matters of community interest. We are also committed to conducting our meetings in a productive and efficient manner. So before we begin our public participation this evening, I want to take a moment to review our board policy on this topic. Our board policy sets forth the following rules. Public speakers are required to register in advance and are required to begin their statement by announcing their first name. We will not require you to state your address publicly at this time. Each statement is limited to 3 minutes. Comments that are frivolous, repetitive, or harassing may be prohibited or stopped. Comments must be related to, in this case, they do not need to be related to action items on the agenda. Comments that are off topic, obscene, or personally threatening attacks will be prohibited. State and federal student privacy laws prevent the district from disclosing information related to any student, and you will not be permitted to discuss individual students during public participation. During public participation, each member of the public should direct their comments to the board as a whole. Consistent with our policy, this is not a time to question individual board members or district employees. It is also not a time for audience interaction or reaction. Meeting attendees are required to be silent unless it is their turn to speak. If this does not happen, we will not be able to run an efficient meeting and we will have to stop public participation. If you would like to communicate with the board regarding topics that are not action items on the agenda or that are action items on the agenda and you didn't get a chance to speak this evening, we have plenty of alternatives and channels open for communication, including emailing the board directly. We will read any comments you send to us. With that said, the first speaker for this evening is Mr. Barnes.
My name is Keith Barnes. I'd like to say that most of the changes are calculated and start with a mission statement and objective or a premise. The changes taking place in Dublin City school curriculums are significant, but after asking what was the premise for the changes that are taking place in the Dublin City schools, no response. Do you think the Dublin City schools as a community are racist? No response. Do you feel that students feel unsafe in the Dublin City schools? No response. There's a curriculum being developed around the auspices of inclusion, diversity, equity, and now justice. We should be able to agree upon the definitions. They should unite us. They sound non-political and virtuous, however, they are dividing our community. Why? Because the terms are being used to promote an agenda, an ideology that is identity-based, and an ideology that's attempting to destroy the traditional American family. Dublin City Schools has a reputation of excellence. Our diversity has been our strength. So why are the schools being rebranded? I ask also what was meant by rebranding. No answer. So I guess at this point, parents, grandparents, citizens will draw their own conclusions. We talked about surveys before, and I've seen just about every one of them. The OES, the Centero, the Panorama, the LGBTQ that was used at Chapman High School for 3 to 5 year olds. And the News Depth program that's being shown each week in many of the elementary schools. And they collect data for children to further their agendas. They promote programs and policies. And in my opinion, they're exploiting children and making millions of dollars in the process. So social emotional learning advocates tell parents their product is transformational to spur greater academic achievement and personal fulfillment for students. However, numerous academic experts argue that the evidence supporting these claims is shallow and that the social emotional learning presents numerous risks to students' psychological development and violates students' privacy by collecting personal data. And I'll share some examples of questions that were given to 12-year-olds and up. The last time you had sexual intercourse, what one method did you use on your partner to use to prevent pregnancy? During the past 3 months, how many children or people did you have intercourse with? Did you drink alcohol or drugs before you had sexual intercourse at that time? And the last time you had sexual intercourse, did you use a condom? I can go on and on and on. But I think you get the point. Then they're using the news depth video in elementary schools that are being done on a weekly basis now, I think every Thursday. And there are lesson plans, and they give them tests afterwards. And there's no doubt, I've seen 3 or 4 of them. There's a political agenda being promoted with those videos. One with Emmanuel, Dr. Emmanuel from the
Mr. Barnes, your time is up. Can you please wrap up your comments?
Sure. That's just another way, again, to have a political agenda enter into schools. They deal with climate change. They're attacking the gas and oil industry. All I ask is, look, I've seen it. It's there. There's a lot more, and I'm disappointed that a lot of the blame is being put back on parents who care and are willing to express themselves, because a lot of this has been because of poor communication and execution.
Next up, Mr. Siegel.
Good evening. My name is Robert Siegel. I've been a Dublin resident for 16 years, and I now have 3 teenagers for whom I'm legal guardian, and I've got my hands full with that, I can promise you. I'm also a concerned citizen. My focus tonight is about CRT, or what has been called critical race theory. At the last board meeting, we learned that a newly hired individual in Dublin, a director of equity and diversity, is currently training our school staff. Excuse me, lost my train of thought. After hearing what she had to say, I will confess that I really do not have a clear idea at all what is being taught and expected of teachers and staff, and I'm concerned by that. I'm asking the board to schedule and conduct a meeting where we can openly discuss what the Director of Diversity and Equity and any others who are involved in supporting that agenda are doing. What is the role of this position? What are they teaching? What are they training and expecting from staff? And frankly, why was this position created and hired for in the first place? My comments are not about the individuals involved. It's about what is going on. I'm not clear. I think a meeting should be scheduled providing at least 2 weeks' notice to potential attendees so people can plan and come to the meeting and make their arrangements. I think every person with an interest in our school system from Dublin should be invited. I think a brief overview would be appropriate of the role and agenda of this position. Again, why was it hired for? What are they trying to accomplish? What are they teaching and training? I then recommend an open forum for discussion, perhaps 1.5 to 2 hours long, for parents and concerned citizens to then ask questions and make comments. The time allowance, I think, for speaking should be something greater than 3 minutes, maybe 5 to 7 minutes. I think the board president and school superintendent should be in attendance and prepared to answer questions that the citizens in our community may ask. Please understand that I believe in equal opportunity and justice for all persons. I believe that it is an incumbent on every person to treat others with justice, respect, and dignity. I also believe that CRT is something very different from that.
Mr. Siegel, your time's up. Can you please wrap up your comments?
In the spirit of transparency, I would ask that the board schedule such a meeting, and I hope that a commitment for such a meeting can be given, perhaps even tonight or in the very near future. Thanks so much.
Thank you. The next person signed up, Jan Bates Kreider.
First, I'd like to thank the board for hosting us to speak. After 30-plus years as a professional educator, I thought when I retire, I'm never going to another board meeting, but I'm glad to be here. So who am I? I'm a grandmother of a student here. I moved here about a year ago, and I worked 13 years. I was the Director of Elementary Education in Hilliard when Roger Nels was superintendent. We had the same problems you have, rapid growth, but when I took the job, I had 6 elementary schools, and 13 years later, I had 13. So the job that you do is a lot of work. And I have the same concern, the reason I'm here tonight, about the lane that public education is broadening in your role. And we saw the social-emotional presentation tonight, and of course, every teacher honors that. We live in a divided country, a divided community, and you're either very foolish or very brave to hire a person as a director with that politically charged title. And I watched the board meeting where she spoke, and I was very impressed with Dr. Hamilton. And I'm going to take her up on her offer to work with her, because I think that I have a lot to bring to the table. After all, I trained a lot of really good teachers that left Hilliard when I retired and came to Dublin that you hired, and programs that my teachers and I designed that are now standard practice in this area. I feel very proud of that. It was my passion. It still is my passion. And I'd like to volunteer to help you as a grandparent and also a professional educator. People have the right to an answer. Why was the position created? I looked at the data for your harassment. You have 30-some cases a semester out of over 16,000 students. That's really good. So what are the issues that you're hoping that this will get down to zero, or what? But I want to be part of that.
Your time's up. Can you wrap up your comments, please?
I'm sorry?
Your time is up. Can you wrap up your comments, please?
Yes, and so I'm asking for an appointment with Dr. Marchand. I'd like to get to know you. We have a lot in common. And Dr. Hamilton. And she said that she is looking for support group, and I'd like to volunteer for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Ms. Barnhart.
I am from the South. I was born in Florida, but raised in South Carolina. My name is Ashley Barnhart, and I identify as a concerned parent, not as a domestic terrorist, just to make sure everyone is clear. I'm also the mother of 3 sons, to whom 2 of whom I pulled out of Dublin City Schools last year due to the incredible lack of actual instruction. But that's not why I'm here tonight. Did you know that 1 in 5 children have a speech delay? 1 in 5. This is according to the American Academy of Pediatrics. You know, the doctors who care for our children. At 2 years old, my oldest son was diagnosed with autism. I was told by numerous autism specialists, both PhDs and MDs, that I should not expect for my son to ever potty train, let alone speak. I'm sure you can imagine the heartache I experienced as a first-time mother who longed deeply to hear her child call her name. He had no words, approximations, or sounds besides endless screaming. At almost 4 years old, my son wailed, "Mama!" for the first time on Christmas morning. I wept tears of joy. I worked diligently with him for years, taking speech pathology classes, working closely with his ABA group, and providing him with private speech therapy. At 6 years old, strangers had a hard time understanding what he said. I won't waste our time listing the endless studies by the AAP that provide beyond a reasonable doubt that babies and children learn to speak by watching adults' faces and mouths move. Oh, you know what? I forgot something. Sorry about that. I'm 100% certain any speech pathologist would agree that this is a factual statement and imperative to the social, emotional, and cognitive development of our children. In fact, this exact research was cited repeatedly by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the world's foremost experts on post-traumatic stress disorder and child abuse. Doctor, I would hope that you would look at me while I speak. Can you see my mouth moving? Also, according to the AAP, as of September 30th, 2021, 0.03 of the 5,899,148 children who have had COVID have died from it. That's 1,769 children. Is that too many deaths? Absolutely. However, in the last decade, 84,381 children died from the flu, yet not a single child was required to wear a mask, or required to be vaccinated, or show a negative flu test to return to school. Boy, that seems like inconsistent science, doesn't it? But those 84,000 children's lives, were those less important than the 1,700 that died last year? I'm pretty sure their parents would disagree. With all of that said, I ask you to think for just a moment about the hypocrisy in mandating children and educators to cover their faces. Many who are still working through their speech delays. Remember that 1 in 5 children have speech delays. Yet in the history of our district, it has never been required to put a mask on those children or vaccinate them during flu seasons. Maybe because the science behind flu deaths.
Ms. Barnhart, your time's up. Can you wrap up your comments,
Yes,
please?
absolutely. Isn't lining people's pockets. And to update you all, my oldest son, he can recite the entire Constitution for you. Luckily, he was never forced to wear a mask when learning to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. The last speaker this evening, Ms. Seward.
Hi, I'm Tara Seward. I'm actually a mother of 4, 3 boys and a girl, 3 who are in Dublin schools right now. So I'm in Jerome, Grizel, and Penny. So I get a lot of emails, so I really quickly want to talk through the Oh Yes survey. I wasn't planning on doing that, but I did see a lot on Facebook about that. So this kind of speaks to the complexity of people. I didn't really appreciate some of those questions that were demonstrated on the survey. I'm a product of generational lack of sexual education, and I realized that about myself. As a parent, I have children who have experienced puberty at different times, different stages, different ages. My 12-year-old now has not gone through puberty, and I'm just not comfortable having those conversations with him right now. I just want to practice his jump shot, really. So if that's talked about in school, I'm just not there yet. So maybe the survey can go out to parents instead, because I would have told you that I haven't had those conversations yet, and I'm not okay with doing that right now. That would be different for my other 12-year-old who started puberty at 9. So maybe that conversation would happen with him, but not with my son who hasn't gone through that. Okay, so really quickly, I only have a minute left. Might have to be back next time. All right, so one of the components of social emotional learning is responsible decision making. I teach my children that they need to be accountable for their actions, including but not limited to what they post on social media. Whether it be an original thought or Facebook or Instagram or a retweet on Twitter, their name and reputation are on the line and may ultimately have to answer for it. So I like to tell them our words matter and our posts matter. The notion of taking the high road is by staying silent is so embedded in our culture. Put on blinders or look the other way was the way of the world. However, I believe the time of silence is coming to an end. With advances in technology, people are calling out injustices with programs like anti-bullying and providing safe places for people to share. One can feel supported and not isolated. Social awareness teaches students how to understand different perspectives and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds and cultures. Recently, I had the opportunity to sit down with a school board candidate who I don't see eye to eye necessarily on with issues regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. What I heard was that kindness and character takes care of diversity, equity, and inclusion by default. Unfortunately, kindness does not capture perspective. It doesn't create empathy. It doesn't help one appreciate diversity, and therefore it doesn't necessarily ensure respect. For example, my son, who is dyslexic, was in kindergarten. Instead of writing a story for 30 minutes, he struggled with even spelling out the first sentence.
Ms. Seward, your time's up. If you can wrap up your comments.
Okay. So I just kind of gave some examples here of issues that my son has gone through, my sons have gone through. And the last one of my examples is not the last, but would be he was recalling a statement made by someone at his school who he thought was a friend. After he quit football, the friend told him that by quitting football, he was a waste of a black person. I'd imagine that this child's intent wasn't to be unkind, but his implicit bias was learned and was hurtful. So basically, I think to deprive our students of these opportunities is to send them into a world with ill-equipped and is doing them a disservice. So I really think that the DE&I initiatives are important, and I do trust that our teachers are learning that right now, and I hope that we continue giving them those opportunities and resources.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Melody. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0.